This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 96. We're talking about the best blogs and books of the year, how you can use them to help grow your business. That's coming up on this episode of the Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money, work less, and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
We don't use headphones on this show because you're right next to me, Laurel. I don't need headphones. All the music goes in post-production during the editing process.
Where are you going with this?
Where I'm going with this is that I was in the gym a couple weeks ago and noticed I couldn't hear out of my left ear when I had my headphones in.
Ooh.
Problem, fortunately for me, not my hearing, but all the grime and junk and stuff that's in your ears just got clogged up in the headphone.
That is disgusting.
Completely disgusting. But do you know, this is an interesting statistic, when you're wearing headphones, especially earbuds, bacteria in your ear, 700 times more than just a normal ear without a headphone in it.
Is this like the Dr. Oz show or something? Did we switch podcasts when I wasn't looking?
No, this is bad news for guys that work in radio. We all know this. A public service announcement: if you wear headphones a lot, especially if you're podcasting, because you need to be able to hear what people are saying to you, ear candles. You ever used one?
No.
You've never used an ear candle?
No.
Your new agey, super woo-woo friends and stuff never got you in on the ear candle thing?
I don't think I have any of those friends.
Do you know how they work?
I do not.
It's not really a candle. It's a hollow tube. You stick it in your ear, and it's like a candle in that it's maybe a foot long. You light one end of it, it becomes a chimney. It sucks out all the junk in your ears.
That's just so gross. Let's move on.
And it sizzles and it cracks, and you can cut it open and you can see what was growing inside of you. So if you're into podcasting, if you like music, you wear headphones all the time, and a lot of people do because of smartphones, ear candles. This is the Red Podcast. Red stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. We help you build an audience, sell more products, and make more money. We are business optimizers. We'll show you how to be more efficient in your marketing and find the hidden money that's sitting right in front of you, money on the table. This is about how to live life on your terms. On this episode, we're talking about the best books and resources for 2014. Let's talk about our general philosophy on this first, though, Laurel.
I don't know. Apparently your favorite resource is an ear candle.
You got to be able to hear,
We're
man.
not going to be talking about that anymore. We're actually going to be talking about useful things for business.
Well, they say listen to your audience.
Okay, listening to your audience.
You got to have
You
clean
can't
ears
do
to
that.
do that.
Get an ear candle or whatever.
Our general philosophy is to create more than we consume. Red Podcast, we started out 5 days a week. That was for the launch, though. For 1 month during our launch period, 5 days a week. 3 days a week, though, ever since then. That takes quite a bit of effort. And we wouldn't be able to do this if we were continuously and constantly consuming other people's content. That's our general belief, is that you need to create more than you consume. We're not saying not to consume. We're talking about our best resources of the year that we found. But it is important that you eventually put down what you're reading and actually put good information out there yourself.
So when you say create more than you consume, do you mean take the information you're consuming, whether you're learning about marketing or giving a great speech or whatever, and put it into action? Or do you mean more like create great content more than you consume content?
Well, I think it's create great content. If you want to call it content, it could be create great art if you consider your art content. I believe that we learn by doing. I believe that everybody has something within them to say or to create. And we obviously need consumers because Red Podcast would not exist. It would just be you and me having this conversation. We wouldn't even need to put it out if nobody consumed it. But if you're an entrepreneur, you need to go beyond just consuming information and other people's ideas and get in the playground yourself, start messing around, start learning, start experiencing, and creating your own stuff.
So if you sell a product, and you have your little widget product and you're trying to sell it, how would you create more than you consume if you're trying to grow that business?
My point is that you need to get out and sell that product. Don't just read about selling it, talk about theory of selling it, get on Facebook and discuss what could possibly happen if you were to sell it. Just get in there and do it. Get in the game. Find out that way. And that's your creation.
I think that's the bottom line, what you said, David. It's moving beyond the theory. Entrepreneurs, we love to learn about all this stuff, to learn how to do this or that or grow our business and read blogs and do all that. But that's all theory until you put it into action. So that's really the bottom line there, is just start putting those things into action.
And here's another thing about content that you might consume. A lot of content isn't worth anything. Choose vetted content, books, if you're going to read books, and I love books, from a major publisher. And this is coming from a guy, I've self-published dozens and dozens of books myself. All my titles, self-published. I actually walked away from a major publisher to self-publish. But in general, self-published books, they haven't been through the process of editing, vetting, organizing that needs to happen for you to be able to get good content from them. A lot of them are just thrown together very quickly. They're not edited. They're not thought out. They're not very good. And that's why self-publishing has such a bad name. So choose vetted content, books from a major publisher, trusted seminars. My friend Derek Sivers, he said never go to a first-year event. And there have been exceptions to that rule. But more often, first-year events, you're still working the kinks out. And I think that's important when you're spending your money, your time to go to a seminar, taking time off from your work, and you're looking at the content, which is what we're talking about.
I don't know if I agree with that, because I think the main benefit that I get out of going to big seminars and events and conferences is that I meet cool people. I meet people that are like me. Honestly, I've never really been to a conference where I get a ton out of the content. So I do agree that they're working out the kinks, but I think if the people that you want to connect with are going, then it could be a good chance to go.
Well, that's true, but if the event hasn't been tested, you've got other people that are looking at this philosophy. They're kind of waiting to see who shows up. So even then, a first-year event is going to have a harder time connecting with people, bringing people in like they should, as opposed to maybe a second, third-year event that has a type of reputation. But in general, and this is coming from me being a conference organizer myself, what I've found is there's a bell curve. About the second or third year, things start to peak, and then you're on the way down. Most conferences, they don't have a very long life. They peak relatively quickly, fall down relatively quickly as well.
So you want to get in at year 2 or 3, it sounds like.
Yeah, year 2 or 3, that way you know what you're getting. You know that the kinks have been worked out. It's like seeing a band. The first night, they're getting the kinks worked out. Maybe the lighting doesn't work, the sound system doesn't work. That second night is the one that you want to see. Laurel, you have your own philosophy about the best books. When I approached you about doing this episode, you said, wait a minute, I'm not really reading anything right now. So why is that?
Yeah, when I say I'm not reading anything right now, I don't subscribe to a lot of blogs via RSS or follow people in that capacity. For me, this is how I consume information. If there's something I want to know, like, for instance, how to put on a webinar, then I start researching what software am I going to use? How am I going to market it? What's the best way to put it together? How long should it be? I start researching all these things, and I learn what I need to know, and I implement it. And so that's how I consume information, as opposed to just subscribing to an RSS feed on a blog and just reading whatever they have to say, the blog owner has to say, when they have to say it. That's just my preferred way of doing things. I find that it's just kind of mindless consumption if you just read random stuff all the time. That's just me.
Yeah, it's like eating junk food in front of the television, not really paying attention to what you're eating or even caring. Just shoving things in your mouth. I think it can become that when you look at a Facebook timeline, when you look at Twitter. Have you seen these guys? They seem to spend all day on Twitter. And maybe the whole thing is automated, but all they do is spread links. You're like, oh, man, this is overwhelming. Because I don't follow that many people on Twitter. And you'll see some guys every 10, 15 minutes with a new link to an article on Huffington Post, on some kind of tech site, on some kind of news site like CNN. Hey, there's gloom and doom happening. I think that can take you away from what it is that you should be doing. Think about this. In the upcoming year, if you were to spend even half the amount of time that you spent looking at viral videos and these top 10 link bait lists and YouTube videos, what could you accomplish?
Exactly. I mean, how many times do you read these blog posts and then you get inspired? We all do. We read them, we get inspired. How many times do you actually go and implement something and do it? It doesn't happen very often. And so for me, that's kind of a waste of time. I learn, you said this earlier, David, learn through doing. I learn through doing something. So if there's something I want to do, research, learn exactly how to do it, and then I learn what I need to know, as opposed to just consuming stuff that may not be relevant to me at the time. Maybe it's inspirational, but it kind of gets me a little sidetracked from what I'm actually trying to do. So for me, I like to learn and implement, and it works pretty well.
So with that said, when you go on Facebook, on Twitter, without clicking on these links and being sucked in by them, I think it can be beneficial to look at the titles of the articles that you want to click on, the titles of the videos, and think, hey, that got my attention. Maybe I could use that in my business. That's what we're talking about when we talk about creating more than you consume.
Yeah, I like that. There's a lot of different ways to look at this information, kind of looking at it from the outside instead of from the inside. I think for me, I got a little burnt after writing a lot of guest posts, because there's certain things that blog owners are looking for in guest posts, like the top 10 list or 23 things an entrepreneur can do to be more efficient, or how to make your email newsletter better. All these things, these standard formats. And as a guest blogger, you just kind of fill in this standard format. Doesn't really matter what you're saying. It just kind of has to hit SEO qualifications and all that. And people are just putting a lot of crap out there. Excuse my language there.
Yeah, the top 10 lists.
Yeah, and it's just kind of got me a little jaded that those things are great, if you need a little bit of inspiration, but it's not really adding a lot of value. So that's just makes me just not trust it as much, because the information just isn't vetted very much.
Something that I've seen, because we've been a part of these lists, the top 10 best business podcast. And don't get me wrong, it's very flattering for us to be on those lists. But if you go deeper into what's actually happening, a lot of times it's somebody who's trying to get connected with us. A lot of times there are affiliate links within. I'm blown away by a lot of these websites that seem to be legitimate websites. And I'm talking Huffington Post, Entrepreneur Magazine, Forbes, that have these affiliate type offers coming through. And it's crazy. Somebody's really dropped the ball on this.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I say use that stuff in your own way and implement it. And then you can see if it works for you. Because until then, it's just theory. And I think theory is great. We all like going to school. We all like learning stuff. We all like trying new things. But the key is trying them and not just hanging out reading it on a blog.
Okay, so with that said, let's talk about some sites that we feel are really doing things right, that you can model for your own sites, your own businesses, your own social media outreach in the new year.
One of the podcasts that I actually do listen to, because there are a lot to choose from these days, I listen to Freedom Fastlane. I like that guy. I like it because this guy is doing it. He has his business, and then he kind of gives you the inside scoop on what he does to promote his business. So yes, it's a sales tool to do coaching and training and things like that. But at the same time, he's in the trenches. He's doing it. He's built something successful. He's failed, lost it all, built something successful again. It's just kind of refreshing to hear knowledge from somebody who's actually done it. And that's something that I look for, is blogs and podcasts from people, business owners that are actually doing this stuff. They're implementing it and sharing what they've learned.
You can tell there are, 50 or 60 podcasts that I've found of people that want to be the next Seth Godin. They'll use words like Seth Godin uses. Ship it. Are you shipping? And you can tell that they really don't have that depth that he has. The reason something like Seth Godin works, the reason Freedom Fastlane works is because these guys are doing it. And you can tell, even if it's the same type of content, that they know what they're talking about.
You do have to realize on those, if you follow somebody like us who's actually doing it, that things work for these people that might not work for you. So again, you have to try it out for yourself and implement it. That's the only way to really try it out.
Yeah, if you want a theory, go to school. We were just talking about that a couple episodes ago, about what we think about that. The real way to learn, jump in. You know who I see jumping in, and this is a site that I don't agree with from a philosophical standpoint. Most of the guys reading this site are older than I am. They're more conservative than I am, but I appreciate it. And that's a site called Art of Manliness. Mm-hmm. When it comes to knowing their audience, when it comes to building a community, incredible long-form content. These guys aren't just putting up 200 to 300 word blog posts, real quick, hit it and quit it kind of blog post. Long-form content. And beyond that, not only just one single post, series of long-form content. They've got merch, not just T-shirts, and they've got a great podcast. They know the audience inside and out. And because of that, it's one of the most popular blogs on the internet.
They have great branding as well. And as you said, they've really honed in on who they're for and who their audience is.
On the very opposite of Art of Manliness, another blog that I enjoy, and also their social media stuff I think is fantastic, Total Frat Move. Have you ever seen this site?
I have not.
It is so funny to me. Wasn't in a fraternity, had no desire to be in a fraternity, although I did live in Oxford, Mississippi for a couple of years where probably 10,000 frat guys live. And this site is great as far as making fun of those guys, but in a fun way, in a way where they can actually laugh at themselves. It's very tongue-in-cheek, great social media content, and also great merch. It's amazing. They've got a sorority one for the women. Total Frat Move, if you want to see a resource that is completely dominating the blogging social media sphere. It's just amazing. So thinking about the philosophy that we're talking about of just jumping in, use these sites and use some of the resources that we're talking about as examples of what you can do to have better engagement with your audience, to really get to know them, better content, that long-form content that people are hungry for but don't get, and also more authentic content developed by somebody who's actually doing it, actually living it. The reason I was able to be so successful in the music business for over 20 years was because, one, I started out as a musician, but I was living it, still living it. Here in Nashville, we live and breathe it. Every cab driver is a musician, so I knew what it was like to be a musician, even though I'm not currently doing that, having the past experience and also dealing with musicians on a day-to-day basis. You can't get that without jumping in.
So what about some books? Because you consume a lot of books, David.
A lot of books.
Hopefully you're going to write more in 2015 than you consumed in 2014.
Well, I'm consuming them at the gym through my one good ear.
No.
A lot of audiobooks. And one of the reasons that I like the audiobooks, especially with this genre that I'm getting ready to talk about, autobiographies, is because you can hear the people that created the content, how it comes through in their voice. I think that's really, really important. A lot of times I think entrepreneurs are on an outsourcing kick to have other people write their content for them, to have other people even write their speeches, have other people record their books. I think it's great if you can do that on your own. That's, in fact, the only way that you can do it. I've had certainly a lot of help with the books that I have written. Come up with the idea, write it, have somebody tighten it up for me, and in the end, it wasn't really in my voice. And those books did very well. But once I started to take a book from start to finish, only my words, of course, still using editors and still having a little bit of help, but not bringing in so much ghostwriting help, it changed everything for me. And that's something that I would suggest that you look at as well if you are creating content through other people. So let's talk about some autobiographies that I've read this year and also biographies. Really love the Paul Stanley biography, taking it back to the music business. This is a guy who's had 40 years as an entertainer, getting in front of audiences. And sometimes I think you look at a guy like that that's in front of an arena full of people right now, 12, 15, 20,000 people at a time. And you don't realize that he was born just like we were. He had to gain that kind of skill, had to gain that kind of confidence. And it's a really great book that looks into the mindset of a person who had to build this thing like a business. This doesn't just happen.
Are you saying he was born just like we were? Just
Well,
checking.
Joking around, I was joking around about this is the recurring theme of this episode, hearing through one ear because my headphones were clogged up. Paul Stanley, a musician born with only one ear, and he talks about overcoming that disability, being honest with himself and with fans, and actually going on to help other people with facial deformities. It's just an amazing story. It's called Face the Music, an incredible, incredible example of what it is that you can do when you've got great content and you relate to people and you're not afraid to get out and do the hard work. A related book that I really enjoyed this year, speaking of Paul Stanley and Kiss, and Party Every Day, Larry Harris wrote a book about Casablanca Records. This is an amazing story about building one of the 70s biggest record labels. This is a produce it, distribute it, sell it type of business. That's what record labels used to be. It's called And Party Every Day. Larry Harris, story of Casablanca Records, really, really good. You ever read Hunter S. Thompson, Laurel?
No. Nope.
Never saw Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, the movie?
Nope, missed that.
Well, a lot of people have. Hunter S. Thompson, amazing writer, a guy who did a lot with just a typewriter and some paper back before social media, before the internet. The guy was like a rock star. There's a great book called Outlaw Journalist that I would recommend, talking about the life and times of Hunter S. Thompson. This is a guy that, in a lot of ways, couldn't keep a job, even when people wanted him there. Crazy, crazy guy, but really did things in his own way. I think that's definitely a resource that you can learn from. Also, one of my favorite books, speaking of authors, a man named Turney Duff. This guy is a cool guy that I know. He's got a book called The Buy Side. He went from making $2 million a year doing stock trading and that kind of thing on Wall Street, $2 million a year, left it all to become a writer. He's got a great book called The Buy Side about the ins and outs of Wall Street, what really happens, how all that money is made. This dude had Naughty by Nature play his birthday party.
I don't know what that means.
And Usher. You know Usher?
I know Usher.
All right. Yeah, we got to break it down for the millennials here. He was having private birthday parties. That's how he was rolling for a long, long time. Left that all to become a writer. So if you're interested in a dream like that, you feel like you've got a job that you can't leave, and you're just interested in crazy stories of sex, drugs, Naughty by Nature, and Usher, The Buy Side by Turney Duff is great.
Something that's been really helpful for me to read this past year is as I was writing my business book, it's been really helpful to read a variety of novels. And I'm not going to list them because they will not make you any smarter. But just to look at the writing, I usually pick more humorous novels. So to look at the writing that they do, the humor that they put in there, why it's humorous, really helped me during the year become a better writer. So you don't necessarily have to read business books or inspiring books to help you do what you want to do. It just depends on what your motivation is. So that was super helpful for me this year.
I think that's a great example. So many people stick to one thing. You've got musicians in a metal band, all they listen to is metal. You've got writers that write romance, all they do is read romance novels. Innovation comes from outside your industry. So if you're looking for innovation in your business, look at different things, and it could come from a Harlequin romance novels. That's what Laurel's talking about. That she doesn't want.
I am not reading that. That's funny, though.
It could come from a Harlequin romance novel, in all fairness. But if you do want really brass tacks type of business advice, and this is an independent guy. I was kind of making fun of independent releases earlier. S.J. Scott, Steve Scott, you know Steve Scott because you did an interview with him.
Oh, yeah.
For Go Fire Yourself, which is at gofireyourself.com. This guy has very specific advice. It's like a long, extremely detailed blog post. He sells them for $1, $3, maybe $5 at most. They're all available on Amazon. Just search for S.J. Scott, and we'll have these in the show notes at redpodcast.com/96. Any of the resources that we've mentioned today, including information on how to get a lot of them for free. If you have any questions or comments about what we've been talking about, feel free to reach out to us via the web at redpodcast.com. There you'll find direct contact information for both me and Laurel. If you're listening on iTunes, we'd appreciate you leaving a review, leaving a rating. That helps us to come up more frequently, higher up in the iTunes search engines. More people find out about us, and we build a larger, real entrepreneur development community. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.